Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast. I still have not had a chance to see Ip Man 4, since it's playing nowhere near me, of course. So while I wait for that one, which will probably take months, I thought it would be a good idea to revisit some of the prior films in this franchise and review them. I already have a review on my channel of Ip Man 3. I saw that one when it first came out a few years ago, so check out that video if you haven't already. And this is my review of Ip Man, a Hong Kong martial arts film from 2008 that was directed by Wilson Yip and stars Donnie Yen. Set in 1930s Foshan, which is in southern China, a kung fu master helps his fellow citizens in this traditional martial arts film based on a real-life person, loosely based. The movie opens with a handful of respectful duels, martial arts duels between Chinese masters. But later, it ups the stakes to wartime arena fighting against the Japanese during their occupation of China. So this story has very similar elements to many martial arts films, in that it begins with some lighthearted but hard-hitting sparring matches between the Chinese martial arts masters. Japanese conflicts have also been used in the past. See Fist of Legend or Heroes of the East. Two very different films, by the way. And this film does have a tiny bit of balance in regard to the Japanese characters, despite the fact that some of them are cartoonish villains. More on that later. But this movie does a good job of establishing the protagonist at the peak of his life, or at least at the peak of, his middle-aged life, and then showing his abrupt downfall, financially especially, after the Japanese occupied China. And it's not especially deep or complex, and it's also historically inaccurate regarding Ip Man's life. But it does have some good dramatic impact because the character is relatable. He's first depicted as a man who spends a bit too much time on martial arts, not enough time with his family. That type of dilemma is very everyday man. Even if you're not a martial artist, sometimes you got to work late and you're not there for your kids or something, right? And then our protagonist is thrown into an oppressive situation, and it makes it easy to root for him. Now, some people out there like to criticize Donnie Yen's acting skills, which is entirely deserved if you've seen enough of his films. The Iceman movies are pretty good examples of lackluster Donnie performances, but I've always found him to be fun to watch. He has a certain screen presence about him, even when he's overacting. Almost kind of like Jean-Claude Van Damme, right? Dragon Tiger Gate being an example of glorious camera mugging from Donnie. He's hilarious in that movie, sometimes unintentionally. But with that said, I do think that he gives legitimately good performances in the Ip Man films. He gives a nice temperament to his character, and he establishes a sense of dignity and honor to this popular historical figure. And Donnie can give a good performance if he's put in the right situation. And director Wilson Yip definitely put him in the place to succeed in these Ip Man films. As well as Killzone. I think his performance in Killzone is good as well. Now, I like some of the visual juxtaposition in this film. So, for example, the basic living conditions of Ip Man become significantly worsened after the Japanese occupation. The whole city is in bad shape. Also, the color palette of the film becomes noticeably more drained or washed out of color and features a lot more gray after the Japanese occupation occurs in the story. It's well made in this regard, and they do a good job of figuring out what colors to accentuate at certain points in the film. The beginning of the film is definitely more colorful than the midsection. But what about the action? Fighting is solid. No surprise. Camera angles are wide enough to see everything. Edits are spaced out enough. The action design and physics are very grounded. There are a few accentuated throws that are a bit unrealistic and jumps at times, but nothing too ridiculous, and it only happens occasionally. Sammo Hung was behind the choreography, and this is good stuff. We get a bunch of fighting in this movie, although most of the fights are actually relatively short in terms of duration. There's not a lot of fights in this that really go on for a long time. Now, that could be considered a flaw by some people out there, but there are just so many fights in this film that I think it evens out, just because there's so much fighting. Even though the fights are short, there's enough to satisfy. Now, one of the highlights that action junkies always point out is the one versus many fight scene. It's almost like a dojo fight scene almost, with Donnie Yen against the Japanese near the midpoint. Definitely a highlight. But I also really enjoyed the Suwong Fan versus Donnie Yen fight that takes place early in the film. Yes, that's right. Suwong Fan is the same actor who played Ricky-O in The Story of Ricky. So technically, we get a fight between Ip Man and Ricky-O in this film. And it's very entertaining. It's good. Obviously, he's not powered up like Ricky-O was powered up, but same actor. It's kind of Ricky-O, right? I also think that the finale is entertaining. The fight with the Japanese general, I guess you could call him. Although the villain is not especially intimidating in terms of stature. Overall, I was very pleased and satisfied with both the quality and the quantity of the action in Ip Man. The supporting actors are all good. We get some Johnny Toe regulars like Simon Yam and Gordon Lam, along with Japanese actor Hiroyuki Ikuchi. Now, I've always liked Ikuchi ever since I saw him in the Kiyoshi Kurosawa film Charisma, and he's been in some other stuff that's good too. I had not seen Ikuchi in an action film, though, before this one, and I think he does a good job selling his strikes. He's not a big guy who's going to be intimidating, but he's fast enough to sell his strikes, which is important. His character has a slightly more respectable sense of honor that contrasts with this evil, cartoonish henchman. He has this henchman who's just a total mustache-twirling villain. But Ikuchi's character, it has a certain sense of honor about him. He's not totally honorable, but he doesn't want to stoop too low in terms of the actual fighting. He wants it to be an honorable fight. So at least there's that much to give a little bit of balance to the Japanese character there. So all in all, Ip Man is considered by many to be Donnie Yen's landmark film of his entire career. Now, for me personally, it was Killzone and In the Line of Duty 4 that made me a fan of this actor. But Ip Man has a certain craftsmanship and dramaticism to it that works for a lot of people out there. It's a must-watch for fans of martial arts films, and it's widely available as well. And as always, I'll see you next time.